Paul. Welcome to the Payal Nanjiani Leadership Podcast. Such an honor to have you here again.
Hi, Payal. Well, greetings from Tokyo, and wow, it's wonderful to be here again. And before we start, congratulations to you and all the great stuff you're doing since we spoke last
Thank,
time.
thank you. But it's so lovely to have you back again. I think our conversations never end with the amount of experience you have, with the amount of global knowledge that you have accumulated. I think you are just phenomenal in what you are doing. So I'm so glad that you have been able to make this again for us.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. It's been an amazing journey so far. And as life goes, some changes recently, which I'm sure we can chat about in the next little bit.
Yeah, I know. You and I the other day we were talking about how you have left, moved out of Randstad right now, and that also you did it at a time when you were getting a promotion, so you were growing in the company, and you took that leap of leaving that on the table and starting your own consultancy firm. So let me first go back and ask you: you were growing well, you were getting into the next promotion. What made you decide that, hey, it's enough now? I just don't want that promotion. I'm okay without it.
Well, let's go back a little bit. In fact, even when we spoke before, and I shared the story of how I was in India from 2017 to 21,
Yeah.
leading the turnaround of very large, complex organization across all of India, 75 offices, 65,000 people. It was a business that was struggling, and it was a turnaround story, and we did it. And I say we because it really was a collective effort. That's one of the first lessons you learn as a leader is you can't do it alone. It requires the movement. Hence, my book was born. The idea of people
The
coming
E5
together.
movement.
You got it, to create a movement. Then I had the opportunity to go to Japan with Randstad, and that actually would be my fourth time living in Japan. Somehow, my destiny keeps taking me back to Japan with some taste of India along the way. I fell in love with both places, as you know well. So I came back to Japan, very different story. The Japan operation was strong, solid, steady, as Japanese operations tend to be, but it wasn't growing fast. There was a challenge with engagement, and attrition was high, quite unusual for Japan. So my mission was actually very different than the one in India. The challenge then was to grow something that was a bit stale, and go from conservative to a bit more aggressive, but also inject some energy and some fun into the brand, to increase employee engagement, to really get into what we say in Japanese, the gemba on the ground, in the field, right? Where the people are working. And that's something I love to do. So I had a great couple of years. And again, things were going really well. Best ever results. Engagement was up, attrition was down. And, Japan was a shining star. But I hit a fork in the road because, as you know, Payal, and the leaders you've spoken to, those who work in the corporate world, the goal is always to continue to navigate through the ups and downs and eventually get to a senior role,
Right.
And go as far as you can. I hit a point about a year and a half ago when the discussion was about my future. And actually, I had an aha moment. And that aha moment was really about my purpose, my why. And perhaps it's something about getting to, mid-50s, sitting in the CEO seat for a while, having sons that are grown up and becoming fine young men and independent, that it opened up the opportunity for me to rethink my why. And that's when I came back to my conclusion, which is why I launched Take 5 Global. So in a nutshell, the opportunity to actually move up in the company was the trigger that caused me to conclude that I needed to step off the bus and go independent.
Yeah, it's not a very common thing to hear. People wait for these promotions, like you said, and uh, so from what I'm hearing from you, Paul, is that knowing your purpose is what can help you decide the way forward in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes we get a little bit hypnotized or mesmerized by this idea of the promotion, right? And moving up the scale, climbing the ladder, because that's what the world tells us to do. That's the norm, right? You get a promotion, you accept it. And most people don't decline promotions. It's quite unusual, right? Because you work hard for it. But in my mind, I thought it was an opportunity for me to really rethink the next stage of my life. And by the way, it was a wonderful company. I had such a learning journey along the way. I grew a lot, and I was able to also make a positive impact on the organization. But then I also had that moment where I thought, maybe I can do more. And maybe I can have a bigger impact and a wider impact if I'm not only working for one organization. So that was, again, an aha moment. What about all these learnings that you talked about early that, I had along the journey and that all leaders have, those tools in your box? What about if you're free then to share those with the whole world rather than just the organization you work with?
So what are some of these tools as you have learned in your journey? Like you said, it was a complete learning, and you've accumulated so much of these tools that you can share. What are some of these learnings, some of these lessons, these tools that you feel have been very, very valuable and very necessary for you to grow ahead?
I've been really lucky, Payal, because I worked in so many different environments, culturally, of course, geographically, and so on, and size of business and so on, types of business. But if you think about Japan and India, I think if you put the whole world onto a scale or a continuum, I think Japan and India would be almost at opposite ends of the continuum when it comes to business culture, when it comes to, the norms of society and so on. There is some overlap. Both countries are extremely family oriented, spiritual, and so on. I think relatively peaceful. But when you talk about Japan, slow and steady, Kaizen, focus on quality, incremental improvement. And then you talk about India, Jugad, the
Yes.
land of maybe organized chaos is a good way to put it. The energy, the speed, the spirit, and so on. Just, to marry those qualities of, focusing on incremental improvement, slow and steady versus the speed and energy of India, to bring those two together, that to me was very exciting. I was lucky to be able to work in completely different environments and also turn around versus a growth story. And so some of the muscles that I built along the way, certainly one is that I realized clearly that some things about leadership are universal. So whether you're leading in Japan or you're leading in India or you're leading in the United States or in Mexico or China, it really doesn't matter. Some things are universal, regardless of the place and the size of the organization. One of those is that people around the world will answer yes to this question. Would you follow someone who does what they say, who has your back in good times and bad, that makes promises and keeps them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, Pyle? All over the world. Anybody you
Right.
talk to, anybody you speak to, anyone in the organization would say so. So I learned that's one thing. That's one important lesson. Leadership, effective leadership, is universal and borderless. That's one. Secondly, I also learned the importance of the positioning of the leadership. Ken Blanchard came up with situational leadership, which really talked about where the leader needs to be at the right moment. And I view that as, does the leader need to be at the front, at the side, at the back, middle? And one more thing that was really important for me, a discovery: sometimes the leader needs to not be there to allow the team freedom to move. And that was another, I think, important quality that I picked up along the way. So, some things are universal about leadership, and certainly developing the ability to know when to be fully in the game, at the front setting pace, at the back supporting, by the side cheering, or sometimes not there.
Wow. Not there is something we don't hear often.
It's a
Leader
strange
always
thing to
has
say,
to be
isn't it?
there, right? So you've brought a new perspective into this, that sometimes a leader doesn't have to be there. What does that look like?
It's similar to the leader without a title, isn't it? I mean, we talk about leadership without a title, leaders naturally emerge. It's the same concept in a way. Well, I'll give you an example. And I would really like it if you ask future leaders who appear on your podcast this question. Ask them if they've ever had an experience like I've had, where when they went away on holiday or they went away on a business trip and they came back afterwards, how did the team perform in their absence? In my experience, and it's happened to me so many times, where I went away again on a holiday, a business trip, whatever it was, and I came back and the team smashed it. They were doing amazing things. They set, new best evers and so on. So it's this kind of it's a bit of a wake-up call for leaders to know that when you're away, the team actually has the potential to shine.
So,
So
Paul,
it's
is there anything that the leader has to do so that he or she can come to this come to this point where when they are not there, the team is performing outstandingly well? Does anything have to be done in your regular life while you are there so that your absence is felt, but at the same time, the team is performing great?
So here's the key in my mind and in my experience as well. Of course, it's about trust. It's about trusting the people to do the right thing while you're not there. But it's also about, and you mentioned my title and my new, let's say, my new adventure here, Chief
Yeah.
Enabling Officer.
Yes.
The most important mission of the effective leader is to enable every single person on the team to be the best true version of themselves and to shine. Because let's face it, work should be about showing what you got, making an impact, enjoying, shining. I would say even work should be about fun, because it is fun to succeed, to achieve, to celebrate. And so the leader's role is really about enabling. If you spend every day, if you start every day thinking, how am I going to enable each and every member of my team to shine today? When you do leave, well, what will naturally happen? They'll be able to shine. They'll be able to spread their wings and make an impact. So that's something that I think a lot of leaders, I'm starting to hear more and more leaders that I speak to that are focusing more on how can I enable others to shine rather than give answers, help them find the answers.
Yeah.
Rather than pick up the hammer, let them pick up the hammer.
Wow, I
and
like
try.
that.
Yeah. So
And
it's
like you said, this
stepping
is
back a bit.
something you do it every day. So you do this thing every day. And you being a CEO, and and just now when we read about your bio, we said Chief Enabling Officer, right? And then you and I were discussing that the word CEO means different things, not just Chief Executive Officer. So what are some of the things that you would put into a CEO meaning?
Well, let's really simplify this. And although the world can never be drawn into two different categories, but let's just make it one category and the other. Okay. And it's not good or bad, because at the end of the day, we define our own ism of leadership, right? We all have our styles. And we
Yeah,
should never be imitating anyone else. Our
I
leadership is
agree.
built,
I see that loud and clear all the time. Yes.
right? It's on the back. Your journey has been different than mine. There is some overlap, but at the end of the day, there's Payelism of leadership. It's your way, and it works for you. And so,
Yeah.
none of us should be judging whether this is right or wrong or good or bad. But certainly, there are types of leadership. I would say the CEO. You can have a lot of fun with this, defining that E. One type of leader, and I like to think I'm in this category, is the type of leader who looks at the E as enabling. Another one is engaging or engagement, the chief engagement officer. In other words, not sitting in the room with the door closed, but actually the door is always open. And more often than not, the leader's not at their desk sitting in the room. They're out on the floor. They're with the people. They're in the game. And if you're in a business that sells, like most businesses do, you're meeting customers with your team. You're visiting your team members. You're in the game, the engagement. I think the other one is the envision piece. So leaders, the effective leaders, spend some time thinking about the vision, the why, the purpose. And once that's clear in their own mind, and it's not what, it's not how much, it's not how many, it's about why, then they take it. And the other E is express. They go out and express it. They share it with the world. The only way to do that properly,
Beautiful.
be outside in the game with the team. So there's a bunch of E's: energize, empathize. You can have a lot of fun. Now go to the other side. And I've seen this. The extreme opposite would be the leader who sees his or her role. CEO means Chief Excel Officer. Excel meaning Excel spreadsheet.
So like more on the numbers and the P&L and everything.
Run the business. My role is to deliver the numbers. Therefore, I need to focus on the numbers. Therefore, I will be at my desk focusing on the numbers, conversion ratios, the metrics, the P&L, the forecast versus actual, all those things that help you get your finger on the pulse of the business. And there are those types of leaders. And then they rely on the other leaders around them on their team to do all the other E's that I just mentioned. So that's another definition. So it can be very metric focused. I would say Excel. So less of expressing and energizing and envisioning, and more about the execution on more of the tactical focus. And the goal is the same, is to deliver outperformance, of course, to build an organization that we're proud of, that delivers on the promise and executes and brings the results to stakeholders and so on. The way to get there is different. And it can be a combination of both, by the way. So I actually drew a pie to kind of look at how I would spend my day typically in the CEO seat. So we'll go back to the Randstad days in India. And, yeah, and you divide that up into percentages. And what I discovered was that I was spending a small amount of time looking at the Excel spreadsheets. Why? Because I had a CFO that I trusted, and he loved the numbers. And when there was an issue with the numbers, he was sure to come to me so I wasn't blindsided. So I had the trust in my CFO to ensure that I was enabled. I could go out and do those other things that I just said to you, to get out and engage, to envision, to express, to energize, and of course, to execute with the team. So that's one discovery for me as well. Surround yourself with people that can help you as a leader do what you really want to do, where you feel you can shine as a leader. And if you find you're spending too much time in your room looking at Excel spreadsheets, maybe rethink that for a moment. Okay. If you really want to be out with the team, energizing, envisioning, executing, expressing, and so on, engaging, well, maybe you need to surround yourself with somebody who can take that piece of the pie.
That's nice. Earlier, when you and I were speaking, Paul, you mentioned about how your calendar, and right now also you said something about it, and how your calendar at one time was packed, when you were the CEO at Randstad. And as you stepped down, you found that you have space in your calendar. Tell us a little bit about that.
Temporarily, yes. I'll tell you what happened. It's what an experience. It's almost like the movie The Matrix, with the red pill and
that was a wonderful movie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this metamorphosis. So here's what happened. On January 31st, when I went to bed that night, I was the CEO of approximately $1.5 billion company, 35,000 people, 95 offices in Japan, responsible for the livelihoods of this huge organization, the people who are involved. And then I woke up February 1st the next morning, and it was just me, because I'd officially graduated from Randstad. And the funny thing, what happened was, so until January 31st, when I opened up my calendar, and we're on the Google platform, so I open up Google Calendar, morning till night, just jam-packed, no time to breathe. And I really like that. I like that pace. And when I look at my calendar, a lot of it was really enabling, engaging, envisioning, expressing, energizing with the team, right? And then on February 1st, I opened up my calendar, and it was pure white.
Whoa, and how does that feel?
I can't remember the last time I've seen it. It was a very strange feeling. Almost
like good or bad? Like did you feel good about it, or did you feel no, not so good?
I had mixed emotions, to be honest. First of all, it's unfamiliar. We are in a way, the negative way to look at it is we become slaves to our calendars, right? We don't control our calendars, calendars control us. We've kind of fallen into that trap. Technology is a wonderful thing, but you can really end up overdoing it when it comes to filling your calendar, filling the white space. But it's an analogy, the white space, the silence between the musical notes is where the beauty is, right?
Yeah.
We learn that when we listen to music. It's the pauses where the actual beauty is. It's the same thing, I think, for a leader. It's so important to push pause from time to time and have that moment to breathe. So suddenly I had this big opportunity to push pause. It was unfamiliar. First, when I looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, I got to fill it up. Default, right? It's like an empty room. You gotta fill it up with stuff. Then I thought, hang on. I need to listen to my own advice. I'm just going to leave it blank for a while. And I'm going to enjoy having an empty calendar and fill it with things that are meaningful. That again, connect.
Yes.
So yeah, it was great, exciting. I have to be honest, though, my confession, I'm starting to fill it up. But I'm filling it up with things that I want to do, that excite, things that are really in my sweet spot of
and you're going to keep the white space.
I'm protecting the white space for sure.
That's nice. That's good. Paul, you have had so much of experience. In your experience, what are some of the traits that you look at when you hire people? What are some of the things you want to see in people in your team?
So it's a great question. And by the way, any leader that you talk with, you ask them, what is your ultimate deciding factor when you hire somebody? There's
Mhm.
so much science. There's
There's
psychometrics,
so
there's
much,
DISC, there's
yes.
Myers-Briggs, there's all kinds of top talent. There's all kinds of things you can do. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, the leaders that I speak to, they go with their instinct. They go with their gut feeling. After you've gone through all the science and talent acquisition has done their job, at the end of the day, you go with your gut feeling. So one thing that I try not to do is hire a mini me. I've gone through those stages, and
I
many
love that.
leaders,
Yeah.
the mini me syndrome. And it's
Mhm.
natural to do that. You know, when you connect with someone who has the same interests or hobbies, or even take it to, we graduated from the same university. Oh, you went to that university. I went to, or
Yeah.
you're from that town. I'm from that town.
Yeah.
We look for commonalities. And actually, what we do know is that teams that are diverse are stronger. So we should actually be looking for diversity when we're hiring. So I look for diversity, not only about gender and so on. I mean diversity of perspectives and experiences. I really want to
Yeah.
meet with people who've had a different journey than I've had, so I can learn from them and they can learn from me, of course, and the team. So that's one. Next one is I look for somebody who is open and transparent and honest about the difficulties they've had on their journey, and
Mhm.
also the learnings that they've taken away from those difficulties. We often we fall in the trap of talking about our successes,
Mhm.
but actually the learning comes more
Failures.
through
Yeah.
failures and our challenges. So I want to hear about those. Um, One of the questions I ask if I'm interviewing leaders, and I encourage all leaders to do this, it's great to hear about all the accomplishments and achievements that the leader has had on his or her journey. And, you know, and your very kind introduction of me. But if you were interviewing me, there's one question that I think you should ask me, and that would be, hey, Paul, tell me about some of the leaders that you've mentored along your journey,
Mhm.
and what have they gone on to do? Maybe some of the people you're proud of that you've mentored along your journey that have worked with you. Now, if I'm an enabling leader, I can talk to you for an hour, 2 hours about so many different people
Yeah.
that have worked with me over the years that I'm so proud of, that have gone on to do great things. And I talk about them and why I'm proud. That tells you a few things. One, it tells you that I actually care about the people I've worked with, and I'm so proud to see them go on to do great things. And it also tells you something really insightful. Paul's still in touch with people who
Yeah.
used to work with him. He values relationships.
I
So
agree.
it's a wonderful question. I encourage everybody to ask that question to leaders if you're interviewing them. Tell me about those that you have mentored and raised over the years, and what have they gone on to do, and see what you get. There are some people that just can't talk about it. They can't think of anyone.
Yeah.
So that's a red flag.
No, I agree with that, especially when you said the first point that it's about keeping up with the people, and it's about you mentioned something in the first point. I don't recollect immediately. Um, you said something which resonated very closely with me,
Well,
and
first, tell me about the people that you have enabled to go on to do great things, and then
yes,
being
yes,
able to talk about that and actually being
yes.
aware. Because sometimes,
Aware of the people. Yes. So you keep in touch
right.
with them. And then you also said about the mini me syndrome, I tell all the leaders that please don't create clones in your companies, just because you are in a certain way, you don't want others to think in the same direction. You want diversity in the thinking process, not just in the gender piece. So that resonated really closely with me. Um, Not everybody makes it to the CEO positions and takes that seat, right? We have so many average leaders, and then we have a few of them who actually do exceptionally well and they reach to that CEO position. What does it take to get there?
Well, if there was one simple answer, then, you and I would package that and we would have a massive bestseller. But I do have a couple of hints on my own journey.
We
Okay.
need to write on
First,
that.
first of all, there's a triangle of any organization, right? And you get into the front line, obviously the numbers of people will be higher as you move up. When you get to a company, there can only be one.
Yeah.
So, okay, how do you get to that role? And then from there, how do you get to maybe the next step, which could be CEO of a larger company or chairman or chairperson and so on? I really think there comes a point first early in the career, and you talk to a lot of people who've had the journey. you focus on becoming a specialist. Focus on becoming really good at something, right?
Mastery,
And so
like you have a mastery and an expert in your.
you become you master whatever you're, whether you're a finance person, or HR, or you're a salesperson, whatever. You become very, very good at it, right? Then at one point, someone identifies you as having some leadership capabilities. Sometimes it's simply because you were the number one performer as a player. And now they're asking you to be a leader. And then that's the first step into leadership. And a lot of people struggle with that because actually that's the first management layer, right? Then from there, the zigzag up to senior leadership is really about making the transition from being a player to being a manager who enables. And I'll bring that word in again. If only I knew this back when I was in my 20s, because it took me until mid-40s to realize that true leadership is about enabling. So all the young leaders out there, up and coming, focus all your energy on helping those around you on your team be better, to succeed. And you will absolutely move up. Now, there comes a point where you become manager, senior manager. Then you get to that layer. And that's to bust through to that final part of the triangle, let's say a board member or a CXO level. I'll tell you what, it's less about your specialization. It's less about your mastery of the topic and the skill. It's now more about relationships. So the leaders who break through that, let's say that last ceiling into the top tier of leadership, again, we'll say CXO level, right? What separates that HR manager from the CHRO? What separates that finance manager from the CFO? And so on and so on. It always comes back not to mastery, because anyone at that level is going to be good at what they do. Let's face it, right? But to get to that next stage, it's about relationships, building relationships. And when I say relationships, I mean people that you trust, people that trust you, people that you can confide in, people who you can ask for advice from as well, and vice versa. And at one point, it becomes a very easy decision for the organization to say, this person has trust, this person has humility, this person has mastery, followership. It's time to put that person into that senior role. And I would say one more thing. And I get this question a lot from the younger, the 20-something-year-old saying, hey, I want to be a CEO one day. What should I do? So the first answer is stop thinking about being a CEO and focus on today. Be the best you can be right now.
Do it today. Yeah.
And it will naturally happen.
And coming to this generation that you said, I have seen that they are always in a rush. They want everything very instantly, you know. When will I become a CEO? Can it happen within a year or 2 years? They just want it now as in now.
I kind of like it, Payal, actually, because, you know, you and I grew up in a world where we were told just keep our head down, work hard, we'll come. You know, I'm actually quite okay with this so-called impatience,
I love eagerness. It too, yes. You know, it just shows how curious they are. You know, it just shows how not impulsive, but they know what they want. This is something I have learned from the generation, that they know what they want. They're working for a purpose.
They're extremely inquisitive, and I get questions from the younger generation that I think I would never have asked. You know, someone asked me recently, so Paul, what is your big dream now? What is your goal in life? And I thought, wow, that's wonderful. You're 23, 24 years old asking me that question. I thought, well, let me share it with you. And that was where I really was able to kind of summarize where I'm at now and where I'm going in the next stage of my journey, which, by the way, Take 5 Global, the sub phrase is do well, do good. That's my purpose, to do well and to do good.
And there is so much to learn from you. You know, everyone has something that they can take away from you. So